Welcome to Anything and Nothing, where we talk about a little bit of anything and a whole lot of nothing. Today I got Mark Ostendorf here with me. He's a good friend. He's got a lot of good experiences, so let's get into the conversation. How's it going, Mark?
Going good.
Good. Okay. Well, you have a lot of experience, and I've had a lot of good conversations with you. So I was really excited to have you on. So I appreciate you coming on. But one quick question to start us off, like, who are you today in this season of life? Like, what's the day in the day of Mark Ostendorf look like?
Never the same from day to day. Newly retired.
Okay.
And transitioning back home to Fort Mitchell, Kentucky with my family and closing down shop here in Camden, South Carolina.
Yeah, cool. Well, how's it feel to say that you're retired? How's that feel?
So all my friends who had retired said, every day's like Saturday. You know what?
Is it?
Right.
Oh, man.
Some days are like Sunday, and that's a mixed blessing. But
right.
Anyway.
Okay, cool. I am kind of interested because I know somewhat about you, but what life looked like growing up? How was that?
So, yeah, I grew up in a kind of a rural setting, northeast Indianapolis, which was farmland and animal paddocks and transitioning toward a suburban environment. But for most of my childhood, it was rural.
Okay.
We had 3 acres at the point where I was little and we moved there. There were 6 of us.
Oh, wow.
It grew to 9 kids and mom and dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have kids now too. So how big is your family right now?
So 4 children, all grown,
Okay.
and 7 grandchildren.
Awesome.
Everybody's married and has reproduced.
Awesome, man. That's the goal in life, right? So,
right. Yeah.
Okay. What was your very first job?
I never considered being a Boy Scout camp counselor, gainful employment, but that was my first job.
Okay.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah. So what kind of work did that entail? Like, how'd you get into that?
Sure. Well, I was a Boy Scout.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Eagle Scout,
right?
For whatever that's worth. But camping and outside activities were just really what my life centered around.
Right.
And the environment that we had was just a few miles off of IU down in Bloomington, Indiana on Monroe Reservoir, a place called Ramsburg Reservation.
Right.
Yeah. So worked there for a couple of years. And what that involved was helping campers get their advancements, merit badges, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I ran the quartermaster store and helped out in the trading post as sidelines to that. But most of it was helping kids with their advancement.
Okay, cool. Where did you go from there?
Well, as soon as I finished that, I came back to, Indianapolis and got a job at a place called Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor.
Okay.
So, did that for almost 4 years.
Okay.
Into leadership, during my college days.
Okay. And how'd that get you into leadership? You were kind of managing?
Yeah. It just progressed, it started as a busboy, taught me how to cook. I learned every facet of it, waiting tables.
Right.
Every part of running the business. So pretty soon I was.
Okay.
And that led to training crews across the country in a variety of spots.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And at some point, you started your own business, didn't you?
Yeah. Years later.
Okay.
Started my business when I was 30 years old.
Okay.
And partnered with my brother, my younger brother, to do that.
What were you guys doing?
So a mix, but primarily printing and mailing equipment, sales and service.
Gotcha.
To all kinds of users, businesses.
Okay. How'd you guys get into that?
That's what I did for a living.
Ah, okay.
Out of college, I was an accountant
Right.
and then just drifted into sales.
Okay.
Sold real estate franchises, sold trailer hitches, aftermarket stuff for automobiles, a lot of things, but then got into business equipment and worked for two different companies before I started my own.
Okay. What made you decide to start your own business?
I always wanted to.
Right.
Alice wanted nothing to do with the restaurant business. I really wanted to open a bar.
Yeah.
And no, I'm a nurse. I already work nights. We don't need two of us doing that.
You ever watched Bar Rescue? Have you ever seen that?
No, I've watched the restaurant version of
okay.
it. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, there was some point where I wanted to start a bar too, just because of that show. But yeah, I that kind of.
Oh, deep down, I still do.
You ought to do that, man. You ought to get you a bar going.
Right.
That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
Mark's Bar.
Yeah. Okay. So you got your business started. How long were you guys doing that?
I bought Dave out about 3 years into it, and I did it for 13.
Okay.
And sold it in 2 pieces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's that mean? 2 pieces.
So mailing and printing finishing are 2 parts of one process that convert an idea into something tangible that is delivered to somebody who needs it for information or for marketing purposes. Okay. So we did every facet of that.
Right.
And in terms of selling.
Okay.
Including providing it as a service.
Okay.
And the mailing is highly regulated and became the less satisfying part of the business.
Okay.
The more satisfying was the finishing and some of the supply aspects of it.
Right.
That I was interested in and pursued that. So I sold the mailing part in 1997.
Okay.
And just focused on the printing finishing part.
Right.
And did that until about 2002.
Okay. And after 2002, is that when you kind of went into management?
I worked with one of my competitors in Cincinnati, moved from Indianapolis to Cincinnati, and proceeded to do the same thing as an employee for 10 more years.
Cool. And at what point did you transition into management? Because I know you said you were in leadership for a while.
So in that business?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was leadership. I had 5 employees in Indianapolis.
Okay.
So, just in all roles, technical and repair and sales.
Right.
So one staff person, my brother and I on top of it. So led them. But most of my leadership experience has been more in the last, since 2010.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess technically speaking, you got a business you're operating your leadership then too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's, you do it and you do the doing that lets you do it.
Right. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Wow. I always said that it took 2/3 to do the business and 1/3 to being in business.
Okay.
And that third did not live in a 50-hour week.
Right.
It took considerably more.
Yeah.
And, so it was smart to let some of that go and bring in somebody to help me with the back office stuff,
right?
To free me to going into it. But it was always a challenge to get to help my team get nose to nose with a customer,
right?
And keep that going,
right? So now you're into retirement. How's that been?
It's been awesome, but honestly, it's right now it's been a lot of transition and just about done with that.
Okay.
Transition being again closing up shop here in Camden. Yeah.
Getting everything situated.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you spent a lot of time as a leader, you led your own business. You're a leader in multiple companies. What do you think is the key difference between a good leader and just a manager?
So, well worn out term because it's a good one.
Right.
People manage things and you lead people.
Right.
And when you mix that up, you have dysfunction.
Yeah.
I forget the question, but go ahead and ask again.
No, I was saying, what do you think makes a great leader versus just a manager?
Yeah. So a great leader helps the team lead themselves
Right.
to success and make it seem like it's their idea.
Right. I can definitely agree with that. Obviously, I've spent some time in leadership as well.
Right. Yep. And you're good at it.
I appreciate that. You are as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So out of all the things that you've done through your life, what was the most exciting or your favorite part?
Owning the business.
Owning the business?
Yeah.
Was it stressful?
Oh yeah, everything is. Yeah, everything is. But what I began to realize, and you're rubbing at, or you're bumping against what's the most important, and been married to one woman.
Oh yeah.
For their 44 years.
Okay.
And about the 1997 part, had been in the business. We opened in 89.
Right.
Okay. So, coming up on 10, or at least it felt like it. The business was not going where I wanted.
Right.
And that really had to do with the life cycle of what we were selling.
Right.
And I went into it kind of knowing that. And part of my brother Dave is we were going to transition to more software development. That was what he was good at.
Right.
And we used this as an entry. It was an interesting scheme, but it let me do what I knew how to do well as he was developing his part. So anyway, that was not happening.
Yeah.
And there was no growth in what I was doing.
Yeah.
You could buy your competitor, or you could beg capital and buy your competitor, that way. Or merge or do whatever, but there were no more sales.
Right. I got you.
Yeah. So I was selling it. And this was a tough conversation with Alice and I, because kids' college was coming up, and guess what? We were going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it was like, going through a divorce.
Yeah.
And I was the bad guy to the business.
Yeah.
And so there's a grieving process with that. But what changed my mind, Rob, and I think this is something really important that people have to, what is important to you? And it became increasingly obvious to me my family was more important than the business.
Right.
The business was not doing so much for the family that it replaced the things that the family needed me as a father and a husband.
Okay. I got 100%.
It goes one step further.
Okay.
I looked at my customer list, and it was made up from everything from Fortune 500 businesses to top universities to mom and pop operations and up and coming entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I looked at every key manager or owner who were on my client list, and I knew them very well. I knew their stories.
Yeah.
Okay. That was, and that's something you and I've talked about,
Right.
the need of, having a rapport with your client base, your customer base. I knew who had successful marriages and who didn't. Guess how many of the successful entrepreneurs that I knew had one spouse marriages?
5%.
That would have been generous.
Wow.
None.
Wow.
They all came from, and Alice and I were talking, and she goes, "Is that what you want?"
Yeah. Right. No.
Straight face, she asked me that.
Yeah.
And I said, no.
Yeah, I understand that for sure.
That put me on the road to selling. Guess what? I sold to 2 companies. How many of those companies exist today?
I actually know the answer to this because you told me, but go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. One doesn't.
Yeah.
And the other is a shadow of what they were.
Right. Yeah.
So what that says, there's just its own story in that. It could talk about picking better markets, picking better products, but it's also being able to read the future.
Yeah. Obviously, you were in a volatile period for print.
Yeah.
And I think you made a good decision, obviously. What were some of the red flags that made you decide that you needed to get out of the business outside of the family dynamic? I mean, obviously the family dynamic is the most important piece.
Well, during this time, I never gave up being a dad. I was a full-time soccer coach year round.
Yeah.
I was a Boy Scout leader. I was a Girl Scout leader.
Okay.
Yeah, with Alice. And was active in the church, did volunteer activities, and ran the business.
Right.
And I was about your age as this was happening. And I was like, anyway, the fact that I couldn't do it all and be Mr. Do-It-Yourself at home, which I was doing that too, I was like, what something's going to give?
Right.
And so but the thing that you could put a finger on was how much debt I was carrying.
Right.
Okay. And my wealth building was not going the way I wanted.
Right.
Alice and I didn't see one another.
Right.
Now the kids were doing fantastic.
Yeah.
By comparison,
Yeah.
by all evidence, we were like a model family. 5-bedroom colonial house on the hill, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was not a very firm foundation.
I understand.
So the dollars told us the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Follow the money.
Right. So, obviously this is something near and dear to me. Like my parents have been together a really long time, and I'm through one divorce now at this point. You've been with Alice for what, 45 years, you said?
Yeah, 40. We're in our 44th year.
Okay.
Yeah.
44 years. How's that work? How do you make that work, Mark? Break the code.
Yeah. I definitely have my little helper in the car. You've heard that joke.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
has, Alice is amazing.
Right.
And I always say that I made one right decision in my life, and that was her. But I think she actually made the decision.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
of
said,
course.
yeah. But anyway, listening to her, and because she sure as heck listened to me and did what I wanted, that, led us through a
Right.
lot of the things I wanted to do in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
So she was super supportive in the things you were trying to accomplish.
Incredibly.
Okay. That's always helpful. Sure.
Yeah. Very supportive. And, but that support is a two-sided sword.
Right.
Because she would certainly point out where things were not what they ought to be.
Right. So looking back, is there anything you would have changed in how you handled like the business? And
honestly, I don't think I was smart enough to, I think I would have dove in a little more deeply with my brother.
Okay.
And pursued his side of it.
Right.
And that would have been way out of my comfort zone and my knowledge base.
Right.
But I think I would have, especially at those younger years, learned what he did and sold that. And we had other resources there, and I just didn't give that the attention it needed. And that was part of why I ended up, having to buy him out.
Gotcha. Did he continue entrepreneurship afterwards, or did he move on?
Nope.
Okay.
No, he's worked for a major insurance company in a locked vault ever since then.
Gotcha.
Doing what he does and very successful.
Yeah.
At that. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being employed for sure. But I always, well, not always, recently, since I wanted to get more business oriented in the real estate and all that stuff, I've always grounded myself in that saying that salary is the drug they give you to give up your dreams.
Yeah.
So, I totally know where you're coming from with that. But so, like I said, so how did the family dynamic change whenever you sold the business?
In the transition, Alice was, she's a a career pediatric nurse
Right.
who has spent 3/4 of her career in leadership. And it was not what she wanted.
Right.
She was going to be the stay-at-home mom, and, nursing was a career that would support that in a variety of ways. And some of the other triggers had to do with some healthcare concerns with
Right.
the children that, we needed health insurance, and things rolled out from there. That had a big part of it.
Okay.
So ask that question again. With that preamble, I'll answer it better.
You're fine. Well, we could transition on. You can answer it.
Okay.
What's the hardest part about retirement been so far?
You need a plan.
Yeah.
I had a shot at it in 2020 and knew I wasn't ready.
Right.
And you need something. One of your first questions is, what are you doing in retirement? And I gave you a glib answer about transitioning.
Yeah.
I do not have an established routine right now.
Right.
And so I'm not saying dig a rut.
Yeah.
But you need to have some specific goals and objectives that surround what that's important to you,
Yeah.
and you need to pursue them.
Yeah. So I told you earlier, my dad just retired, and one of my concerns is you hear people that when they retire, they just don't do anything, give up, and that's when the decline starts to happen.
Right.
So I'm glad that you're saying all that, because I really think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
But what surprised you most about this phase of your life, if anything?
With complete certainty, knowing it's going to end.
Yeah. That's some,
the mortality. Never really gave a thought to it.
Yeah, that's some deep stuff right there.
Yeah,
for sure. We all got to go.
Yeah.
For sure. So you mentioned that you were looking to retire, or you were in a position where you thought you could retire at 2020, and I'm assuming that's when the market kind of tanked on us and you lost a good chunk of money. How did that affect your outlook on everything?
Rob, Alice and I've lost. My generation has. I think there's data to back this up, but in the early '80s, we were in the midst of anything that rivaled what happened in 1929.
Right.
All right, and I entered with a vengeance the job market at that time.
Right.
Okay. We had another in the late 80s. We had another in the 90s. We had another in 2008.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Cyclical.
And we've lost sizable portions of our portfolio, through our life. My parents' response to that in their day and age was to dig into being frugal and things like that. And that's certainly been part of my value system. But Alice and I had a degree of optimism where, hey, we do the right things and we'll recover.
Uh-huh.
And so we have in each of those instances.
Right.
And then we made the hard decision that rolled out of 2020 to hire an investment advisor.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a surrender. It was, hey, we need more people at the table helping us.
Yeah.
And we had read books on how to do it yourself and trade and invest. And Alice and I are both good. We're both knowledgeable people. Maybe me more so, because my education was in accounting and finance. And I had the intelligence to realize, let's get some experts in.
Right. And
our portfolio has done tremendously.
That's good. That's something to speak about, specialization of functions, for sure.
Yep.
And that's, obviously trying to establish that baseline of funds for retirement is important, for sure. What do you think, how would you define a good retirement? Like, whenever it's all said and done, what do you think would be ideal for you and Alice?
All right. Right now, my burial plot is purchased.
Okay.
The tombstones are purchased.
Right.
But I don't know what's going to be on the tombstone.
What do you want to be on the tombstone, Mark?
Mark Ostendorf, a good guy.
Yeah, you definitely got that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I want to go to heaven.
Yeah.
And excuse me, my nose is itchy.
That'd be fine.
But that's the chore now.
Right.
But getting out of that, for someone to enter that state, they have to be among people who affirm that.
Right.
This isn't something that I've earned. It's something that they give to us.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. It's a gift. Yes.
Yeah. But you earn it because they affirm it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. I was not to get too macabre, but I was more so speaking towards like, what do you think? What do you plan on doing to occupy your time?
Well, that we've got lots of ideas.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I know you just went on a trip, right?
Yeah, we spent a month in Scotland and Ireland.
That's cool.
Kissed the Blarney Stone, that type of thing.
Yeah, I saw the picture. That was awesome.
Yeah. More of that. We want to do more of that. We've got all of the Baltic countries,
Right.
Norway, Sweden, Finland. I want to see Poland, all the Eastern, if we could get there and not get, in trouble with what's going on. I want to go back to the Med.
Yeah.
And, there are a whole lot that I want to do there. My youngest daughter's an archaeologist.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, right now she's a mom.
Yeah.
But, she has a fascination for all of that way deeper than mine.
Right.
And so that's something that, we want Kristen as a tag along.
Yeah.
So there's that. My brother-in-law's retired from the Air Force. He's 15 years younger than but he expects me to stay up with him. He's at, 90% fitness and everything it takes to, be in the military. And I got this. And so our next trip is to go rim to rim on the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
And then I've got to get in shape.
Yeah.
And so I've been working on that and losing weight. My goal is at 75 to be 175.
Yeah.
175 pounds. And so everything that involves in being able to be physically active is very much on my schedule. And I've got a couple of different volunteer activities that when I get back home, I'll be involved in. One's an orphanage and then the other's just activity with the church.
Okay, cool. So definitely centered around God. I mean, I'm a firm believer as well. Mm-hmm. And it's something that's kind of guided my decisions in life and things that I want to do. So how does religion play into your life?
So I'm a little more spiritual and a little less religion.
Gotcha.
With that said, I'm a lifelong Roman Catholic. So
Gotcha.
How do you reconcile those?
Yeah.
And so that's a full-time job right there.
Right.
But it figures in very closely. And I know that my pastor is just waiting for me to get back. And I'm just kind of like, what door, wall can I hide behind?
Right.
And, hold the hymnal up in front of my face when I'm, back in church. But, it's calling.
Yeah. Do you feel like, so this is something that I kind of thought about with my dad. Do you feel like going into retirement, you're more so going from working for somebody else to have a whole lot of people that have a list of things they want you to do now at this point?
I hadn't even, yes. My son, he's got several acres, in southern Kentucky. He needs, Dad thinks he needs.
Yeah.
But there's stuff we want to do together on his property.
Right.
And my daughter in San Antonio needs help with their house. There's a lot of DIY stuff in my future.
Right. Okay. Well, getting back kind of into your future, your past life. What are some of the hardest lessons that you learned and what did you take away from those and how did you transfer that to your children as well?
I never learned how to fail correctly.
Okay. Explain.
When I was young.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard one to explain.
Yeah, elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, but
I kind of know what you mean, but I just just elaborate a little bit.
failure is a gift,
Yes,
and didn't look at it that way.
right.
I grew up in a environment where, you know, you were supposed to succeed. You're
Yeah,
supposed to get A's on your report cards, and I was getting D's.
yeah,
You're supposed to be good at sports. I was good at swimming and wrestling with my brothers. I wasn't very good at, any organized sport.
right.
I was good at scouts. And when I was on staff, I was working on a major award and I failed at getting it.
Ah,
And it was in that group of people, the success was preordained for me.
yeah,
Okay. Without going into too much of the details, so I didn't succeed at it.
right,
I didn't know how to deal with it.
right.
And uh, and I and there was really nobody you could talk to about it. It just wasn't done.
Yeah,
But that's what kind of guided me toward Farrell's and working instead of staying in scouts.
right.
When I was 16, went and got a job and was very successful at
Right.
that, but never really dealt with that failure.
Yeah,
Okay. So I think people that learn how to fail, and that's not probably the right thing. People who learn how to succeed realize that failing is part of the process toward success.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And only until later years, like not 20 years ago,
yeah.
was I able to reconcile that.
Okay,
But it led me into what I did before I retired.
right. That makes me feel a little better because I'm 41 right now. So, and I'm just now learning that lesson myself, and that you have to fail fast, in my opinion.
Yes.
You have to take lessons from it. You have to fail gracefully. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, for me especially, it's gotten hard to where when you fail, to just mope about it, just focus on the failure instead of the lesson from the failure.
Okay.
So I kind of see where you're coming from with that.
Well, I got a whole lot more to say on the subject.
Keep on going.
All right, because the list of my failures is way too long to inventory.
Right.
In 2020, during COVID, during a transition from a pretty successful rise at Amazon, where I had entered as an hourly and came out in senior leadership, I felt like a failure.
Yeah.
And I came across a notion of gratitude. You and I have talked about this.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And this is the antidote for a lot of things.
Yeah.
But the idea that you live in a world where you are thankful for things and repeatedly, I set a kind of a goal. I want to say thank you 1,000 times a day.
Right.
Well, what do you have to do to be able to do that?
Yeah.
I'm asking.
You well, I mean, if you're by yourself, for sure, you have to start saying thank you to God. You know?
Yeah. It's a lot easier when you're around people.
Yeah.
And that was a huge transition for me.
Right.
I began to see people as the opportunity and the pathway and not as the obstacle.
Right.
And because that is where the gratitude is so much more abundant.
Yeah.
What was that paradigm shift was huge in my life and still is to this day. So where I could spend from the better part of October to now in solitude and still practice that.
Yeah.
Because I learned it from all the folks I was around.
Right.
Yeah.
So you might not realize this, but that actual conversation that you're referring to is one of the things that changed my perspective on the way I wanted to go about doing business. And not just the gratitude piece of it, but when I first decided I wanted to start a business, I was mainly capital focused. I want to make money. I want to, be able to just live comfortably, that type thing. And after that conversation with you, I kind of transitioned a bit to see who can I bring along with me? How can I help people? And then, because at the end of the day, helping other folks meet their goals is showing gratitude in that they're helping me meet mine.
Yes.
So it's about building that relationship and just, that conversation that you had with me really was a dynamic shift in the way I think about life in general. So I appreciate that.
Yep. You're welcome.
And like I said, that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have a conversation with you like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. So, what do you think most people get wrong about life?
Wow. What we get wrong about life is that we are not the center
Right.
of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? You're sitting across the mic from one of the most egocentric people you will ever meet in your life.
Right.
And part of the reason Alice and I have had 44 years, together, husband and wife, is she pointed out that character gap way back. And it was part of the conversation that led to selling the first half of my business, where I began to see, you're right. Oh my gosh. I mistook egotism with egocentricity. They're two different things.
Right.
And beginning to understand that was such a tremendous eye opener. So then you live life going, for me, it was like, who can I help?
Right.
Who can I help? And how can I do it?
Right.
And in what way?
Right.
And a lot of things involved in church, leading prayer groups and retreats, and a lot of those things that I've done and am called to go back and pick up where I left off.
Right.
And helping at Amazon, I had there were 13 people I helped transition from hourly to lead level positions, and half of them into salaried positions. So there were 6 that went in, changed their lives.
Right.
It just, and you and I've talked about, though, you picked up the where I left off and have done amazing with that, so that is, to me, what makes life worth living.
Yeah. I've had similar experiences from that perspective as well. I've helped multiple folks as from a work perspective promote, through management and things like that. And it does feel fulfilling, especially when you're spending a lot of time trying to get somebody to understand how to, again, like this goes back to what we were talking about earlier at lunch. I think a lot of folks now aren't being told how to think; they're being told what to think. And it's kind of really destroying the dynamic of our society, in my opinion.
That's the true Nazism.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well,
The true poison. Yeah. I use that word choice on purpose.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if someone was listening right now and they just kind of felt lost, what would be your advice to give them?
Don't carry it alone.
Yeah. Okay. That's deep.
Even Jesus had a helper.
That's right.
Okay. Part of the giving is to give some of your burden to other people.
Right.
And take on part of theirs.
Right.
Okay. Don't try to carry it alone. If you are, it's not going to go anywhere good.
Right. Okay. Not to get macabre again, but you talked about your tombstone.
Believe me, I'm joyful in all this.
Right.
So it may not seem like
No. What do you want your legacy to be?
I haven't written that.
Gotcha.
I haven't written on that yet. In the back, my legacy right now is in words and phrases in 300 poems I've written in the last 20 years.
Okay.
And I don't know,
I've read some of those poems and they are really good. I think they are anyways, you know, who am I? But do you plan on publishing anytime?
It may be my legacy. I just haven't seen a way forward with it yet. And that's only being honest. It's not saying it's surrender.
Right.
I haven't figured out how I'm going to do it. One of the things we talked about at lunch is it's nice to be asked.
Yeah.
And what I've realized with my poems, and I've realized this is not dissimilar from my egocentricity. I would rather people say, hey, I'd like to read one or two of your poems than saying, here it is.
Right.
Tell me what you think.
Yeah.
And well, then I'm making up stuff. I'll tell you all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I haven't gotten to the point where people say, hey, I want to read your poems.
Right.
And so maybe my legacy is, and I may be gone when that happens. It happened to Emily Dickinson. She never realized that they're a group that would say, hey, here's your totally average guy who went out and had helped other people do amazing things, and by virtue of that did so himself.
Right.
And it's all chronicled here. And I want to read that.
Right. Well,
maybe that's my legacy. I haven't figured that out for sure yet.
Hey, that makes sense. How would you want your family to remember you?
Well, that was my next statement. Yeah. My legacy exists in the heartbeats of my 4 children and 7 grandchildren.
Right.
And every time I see them and see a video of their antics and, their if Mark jokes, they are way beyond me in all that.
Yeah.
The stuff they do. And anyway, that's like the guaranteed legacy, and the bonus from Alice and I keeping it together.
Right.
All those years.
Okay. I think we can kind of shift into something a little. It's still bad, but it's a little more lighthearted. So, obviously you went over to Europe and you were traveling and you want to do more of that. How do you feel the war going on is going to impact that, if at all?
We're not sure.
Okay.
It's certainly from a practical standpoint, with the government shutting down in TSA, getting on an airplane right now is not very convenient.
Right.
But I've always approached my travels, and I've traveled pretty widely in main continental Europe, a fair amount in Great Britain now, down the Danube, been to Australia, for quite a lot, Hawaii, Alaska, Anyway, I have found that people are people when you sweep away all the other garbage,
right?
Okay, the noise. And the golden rule kicks in.
Right.
When I'm in Europe, I'm the ability to be gratitude, to be thankful for things is a big part of it. Just comes out in me.
Yeah. I
struck up we were in a town in Scotland, and we're on a dam, looking at a salmon ladder that they had, and it's old construction, and a fellow walks up to me, a little about my age, and we just start talking. He was visiting this from down in England. He was up in Scotland looking at this salmon ladder with me, and we just got talking. It was like I knew the guy my whole life, separated by a similar language. So now we email buddies, and but that just came out of the blue. I think there's lots of opportunity in traveling any place you want to go if you do it with an open mind and humility.
Right. That's one thing I really respect about you, is that you are able to have conversation and dialogue with folks very easily. How did that come about?
In sales training, we had a thing where they talked about going under the gas.
Yeah.
Ether is what the teacher said. And it was supposed to apply to us helping the customers get to that point.
Yeah.
I've had it my whole life. I've been dealing in the ether since I was 5 or 6 years old. I can remember getting up in front of a group of people and speaking at 8 years old, and they loved it. I don't remember what I said. And it's no different. So it's hard for me to answer that question.
Okay.
I do think that every one of us is given a spark.
Yeah.
And manifests itself in a variety of ways. And I've got the spark when it comes to, excuse me, bullshit.
Yeah.
All right. I can talk.
Oh, yeah.
And I love the sound of my voice.
Yeah.
And now it's a matter of dialing that in and channeling it.
Right. That kind of reminds me of a video I seen recently. It was obviously it was a movie. It's make believe and everything, but it said something about how, you know, you aren't like, and I don't know if you ever heard of Jesse Peterson before, but he talks about this sometimes. Like he asks people, "Who are you?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm Mark." Okay, well, who is Mark?
Right.
Mark is the name of the person that the body that you're in.
Yeah,
you know?
but who's
driving? You know, and and then the actual movie they were talking about how like the spirit is kind of like a flashlight on the wall. Just because the light's pointed at the wall doesn't mean you're the wall.
Yeah.
You know, so the spirit's kind of like the light. And for me, that comes from God.
Right.
You know, and I don't want, this isn't meant to be a religious thing or anything like that, but it's just something that I've been reflecting on a lot lately. And, you know, just my thoughts on that. And again, getting back to the gratitude of things and just helping folks. And that's been really fulfilling for me. And I don't know, man, I think that the more people that you interact with, the better you get at it, I guess. Because I sucked at interacting with people for a very long time. And that's kind of why I brought it to you, because I'm like, well, you're good at it, man. Like, I knew from the first time I met you. Like,
so one of the things, I think I shared this with you, that one of the things that's in the back of my mind is I would love to go on stage.
Yeah.
And be in a production of some sort or another. Right. I don't care if it's a commercial for butt wipes. Yeah. Okay. I just something I've had this hankering to do. I don't know how I'm going to actualize it. Yeah. But I have that willingness that if the call came, I would do it.
Yeah.
But I am probably one of the biggest introverts you've ever met.
Yeah.
And I've got this way through repetition.
Okay.
And I 8 years old, I discovered it, and I just kept at it.
Yeah.
And I'm deep down, I would rather just be alone.
Yeah.
And then I realized, now I'm not showing gratitude.
Right. Right.
And so you get back out in the world and things happen.
Okay. Well, we kind of talked about, a lot about where you've been and where do you want to go? Like, where would you like to visit?
Okay.
What's your bucket list look like too? Like,
yeah, man, that bucket list is overflowing. I would like to do the Santiago de Compostela 40-day walk.
Okay.
And I think my brother-in-law is going to do it with us. And what we've talked about is Alice and John and I would rent a motorhome in France, and Alice would drive ahead and read a book, and then drink a Mai Tai or whatever, and John and I would walk to that next spot. And we would have this place, and then in about a month or so, we would get into Santiago de Compostela. Yeah, and for me. Why do I want to do something like that? Well, I like hiking, but I like the idea of using a mode of transportation that was used by people and walking a similar path as people 2,000 years ago might have done.
Right. Because, I mean, they didn't have cars back then and planes.
Not everybody had a horse or a donkey, but we're all asses, Anyway, never mind. But so that's on the bucket list and things similar to it.
Okay. And what are some places you want to visit?
I want to go to Pompeii.
Okay.
I like Kristen, my youngest, go with me because she carry on, about everything that happened there. Pompeii, Italy.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the pyramids in Egypt. I'd like to go to Bethlehem.
Yeah.
And Jerusalem, I don't know. I'd like to do a little of that. That is not high on the list because just, it's not very peaceful there right now.
Right.
But, and I'd like to go to every major national park in the United States, and I would include Canada's national parks in that also.
Yeah. How do you feel about the whole? I know it's kind of in the past now with the Iran thing, but how do you feel about the whole making Canada the 52nd, 53rd state type thing?
I mean, Canada has to settle down a little bit.
Yeah.
But the French speaking part of Canada has been wanting to do that off and on for decades.
Right.
Okay. So to me, I'll answer the questions open arms.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure they would really like it.
Yeah. What do you think their people, do you think, so you said the French speaking portion, like they speak French and English, right? Like I'm not real familiar with Canada.
Right.
Do you think that that the other portion is against it, or why do you think that is?
Well,
not that you're a political expert, but
I think it's economic. Per capita, more money comes out of those middle Western provinces than anywhere else.
Right.
They're contributing way beyond their need.
Yeah, so that's kind of what my understanding of it was. You got a small portion of Canada generating the vast majority of the income for the country.
Right.
And being taxed for it.
Right.
So they kind of was like, yeah, we'll go to the United States. So, okay. Well, if you could jump in a time machine and go back, to 18-year-old Mark, and we talked about this a little bit, what advice would you give him?
Two things. The girl you fall in love with is probably not going to stay in love with you.
Yeah.
Okay. And deal with it.
Yeah.
Deal with it in the time. And chat up your dad.
Yeah.
And just get a really healthy dialogue going there. It'll be good for dad, but it'll be so much better for you.
Right.
So those two things, but everything else, I don't know that I would do differently.
Right.
I don't know that I would do those things. I might do those things differently.
Right.
Having followed the two things I just told you.
Yeah.
Hopefully do them better.
Yeah. So I would have said, buy Apple stock or something like that.
Yeah. Hewlett Packard.
Yeah, there you go.
There were several. Yeah. You couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a good buy, knowing what we know now.
Yeah. Have you seen they've got like this method where you can, you can copy trades of CEOs and politicians and things like that. Have you seen anything on that?
Well, I just have known it, that they're doing those things.
I think there's actually, obviously there's software that does it, but it's so lagged that by the time you get into it, it might be oversaturated already.
Right.
But there was a guy that was teaching a class on how to actually pull the information yourself. And you can, and they're talking about making it illegal where if you're in a position like that, they probably shouldn't be trading anyways. But the guy was talking about, and this could be what your stockbroker's doing, but he was talking about how they would assess senators and people like that don't trade, they don't make any trades for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden they drop $200,000 on this stock nobody's ever heard of. They're like, yep, buy that.
And it's not a pattern, so they get away with it.
Yeah.
It's now this is a whole separate podcast.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I didn't tell you is, my love of history.
Yeah.
And, the love of this country. We haven't even touched on that.
Yeah.
And the fact that our government, just is really struggling.
Yeah.
So
it's losing a lot of, not legitimacy, but trust for sure.
Well, yeah.
And the Doge initiative has uncovered a lot of the fraud that we all knew was there, but nobody really knows how to deal with.
Have been shocked at, how widespread and how much.
Honestly, I was not shocked. And
honestly, I wasn't either.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and then you see the things going on in Minnesota. Have you seen that track? Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Like it's disheartening to know that you have that much money that you're working so hard. They're taking almost half your money and it's going into line people's pockets. So not just that, and wealth transfer programs and stuff like that. So what does I feel like the older generations are more patriotic in a way. What and the younger generations are more anti-patriotic. What drives your patriotism?
Well, how about it hopping in my car and being able to drive from here to Fort Mitchell, Kentucky?
Yeah.
And I've done it. The first time I made that drive, I was in the back seat of Grandma and Grandpa's Rambler, back before the freeways.
Yeah.
Coming down Highway 25, and everything that entailed, and the grandeur of the country. We've added more buildings and things like that, but it's every bit as grand.
Yeah.
And that's just the north-south, going west, a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
And the people, oh my gosh. No, I love the places I've visited, and I'm reaffirmed that I would never want to live. I could live anywhere, but I would always be a person of the United States.
Yeah, 100%. And I love the United States. I wouldn't consider myself overly patriotic, but I definitely love my country.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was to go anywhere, it'd probably be Thailand. But that's just because of my personal experience. Like
yeah.
But America is a place where opportunity is presented to everybody, and I feel like that has transitioned a bit in recent years, but it's transitioning back. So I hopeful that we can get back to the way it used to be in that aspect anyways, where, equality and opportunity is still available for everybody. It's just more difficult.
Well, I agree with what you said, but the degree of difficulty is more a function of here and here than it is of a real existence.
Right.
You get enough people where here and here, your head and your heart, it ain't happening. Guess what?
It ain't happening.
It ain't happening.
Yep.
And the country, physically, the country's still here. It's a fabulous place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The opportunity is still there.
Yeah. The interesting thing for me about United States, because I've traveled outside of the country a good bit, is just the size of the United States. Is almost like every state is a country in and of itself.
Yep.
The culture, the dynamic between people in each area is different.
Yep.
So, I mean, like I said, as far as a diverse population, we've got it in spades here. And, for the most part, we work together as a team. And I think, the closer we get to that, the better off we are as a society for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay. And then, what else? So what do you think about what's going on in Iran? What do you think caused it?
Causing it goes back. Everybody, I guess there's this idea that for most folks, history is 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it certainly isn't for me.
Right.
I think the history of all of that goes back to a decision a Bedouin made around the year 600 AD.
Yeah.
So, and things that spun out of that. But what I think more recently is that Iran sat on a sizable part of petroleum reserves.
Yeah.
And
You're right.
the way that it's been manipulated by its own citizens and we citizens of the world, culminating with a notion that they should have a device that they would not mind using,
Yeah.
that would blow up sizable parts of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the conviction that there are those that will say, no, you're not going to do that, or we're going to limit your ability to do that and make that happen. And so we have what's going on in Iran.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think a lot of folks are saying that, Netanyahu's been talking about how they're days away from nuclear weapons for years now. And I can kind of see that point too. So when it first started, I was a little less supportive than I am now, just because, I didn't know all the facts. There's so much mixed information. I'm not even gonna say disinformation. You can't even omitted
information on purpose.
You can't even tell what's going on at this point, because you got some folks saying this is happening, some folks saying the exact opposite. And it's coming from news sources, man. So it's like really hard to understand what's going on and the dynamic between Israel and Iran and, our country and the world. But it is interesting to think about, all right. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on. It's been fun having conversations with you. I'm going to miss you, man. I know you're moving away, so I'm going to stay in touch. But what is one last piece of advice that you could give me, just knowing who I am and what I'm, trying to accomplish in life? What would you tell me?
I will use it from my own background. I grew up in an environment where you had to be self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. And I took that as a road to take, being self-sufficient, doing things on your own, do it yourself, that type of thing. If it's worth doing, do it yourself. And took that to the exclusion of being with others to do a thing. Mm-hmm. And always, tried to do it and everything. And then also tried to do a lot of things at one time. Yeah. Okay. I've done that. And if you want to do one thing well to the exclusion of all other things, then do it with excellence and by yourself. That'd be fine. And be satisfied with that, whatever that results in. Right. Now, that assumes that there's nobody else in that your commitments aren't to any other person. Right. Okay. If you have a commitment, a family, and a place in society, and these things are important, then you've got to do things with other people, helping them get what they want, and in such a way that they help feed you. Okay. Help feed your soul, help feed your checkbook. All those aspects. And boy, Mark, that's kind of broad-based and vague. No, it's, it is it's a little broad-based, but it kind of is aligned with what I'm seeing for myself. Yeah. Do it with others. It's a whole lot more fun. Yeah, for sure. Okay. And laugh while you're doing it. Yeah. I love comedians. Yeah. Who's your favorite comedian? Of all times, oh, golly. Robin Williams makes me laugh every time I get involved, see him. He's gone. Yeah. But he's not. I don't have a favorite comedian. I like him as I get on every time Alice and I go on a cruise. Yeah. You know what I look forward to? The shows? The comedians. Yeah, yeah. I just love them. They get up there and they lay it all out for you. Okay. Have you ever heard of Kill Tony? No. Okay, you need to check that out. Yeah, I need to. Kill Tony is it's like a podcast, but it's a live podcast. Okay. And they have a bucket full of comedians' names. Everybody in the crowd is people that want to be comedians. They have famous comedians on the show, and then basically everybody that gets drawn from the bucket gets a minute set. It's pretty entertaining. You gotta check that out. If you like comedy, definitely check that out. Yeah. Well, again, thank you again, Mark, for coming. Okay. I try to wrap these up at about an hour. We're about an hour in now. So again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate all the wisdom you've given me through the years, and I appreciate the friendship. So I will continue that, just so you know. Same here. But you got any final words for the? No, just the time went fast. Yeah, man, time flies when you're having fun. So again,
thank you to Mark for coming to the podcast. This is the Anything and Nothing podcast. Obviously, we talked about a whole lot of nothing and a little bit of anything. I said that backwards, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Hopefully you enjoyed. If you guys do enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, leave some comments. If you want to be on the show, message me and I'll be happy to have you on. So that's all I got. Have a good one.